Hey guys, welcome back to Home Built, and in this episode we continue fitting the Panhard rod to the Alfarrari. Okay, well I'd like to start off by saying a huge thank you. We've hit 100,000 subscribers. Thank you so much for all your support to all of you who are watching. I'm very grateful to finally sort of hit this milestone. It doesn't really mean a lot in the whole scheme of things. It's just the fact that we've actually got there, and it just sort of shows a bit of the achievement of what we've all done together with your help to get to this stage, and hopefully moving forward we'll keep doing more crazy builds and keep the channel rolling forward. So today we're back on the Panhard rod that I was fitting last week. There are a bunch of questions. It seems like you guys really enjoyed the little cardboard demonstration I did last week. It helps sort of wrap your head around exactly how these things work. As I said, the Panhard rod is definitely something that I think will benefit this car, particularly with the extra power it's going to have. So today we're going to get back in, we're going to make sure it all fits up and start trying to make it actually fit in the car. All right, so those of you watching last week will have seen that I welded up my mounting brackets, but this mounting bracket for the car side actually doesn't quite fit. The end here is a little bit too close to the holes, and I talked to Colin Byrne on the week off, and as he mentioned, this double walled area is super strong, so I can just cut this out and leave the bottom just open. There's more than enough strength there for what's required. So I'm going to do that. I'm not going to weld another plate on it. I'm just going to trim it out, and it should be nice and strong still and ready to go back in the car. So let's get out the grinding wheel. So I'm back under the back of the car. I've moved the brake line out of the way, but this box is designed to sort of sit up here like so. So you can see these little curls on the bottom of the plate, and that's designed to line up with the bottom of this bar on the T-bar. It's a little bit wide, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to just do a little pie cut out of here, loosen this up, knock it in, and see if we can get it to sit in just the right spot, and then we'll weld it back together again. Okay, so I took a little slice out of the top and bent it over so it's just that little bit tighter, and now it lines up. Okay, so that is now the perfect shape for what I need. So what I'm going to do is I am going to just get back up, TIG weld this all back together into this spot because I know this works, and then we need to start looking at cleaning up the diff so that we can actually weld it or tack it into place on the actual diff itself. Okay, well I have the diff side mount all tacked into place. That's nice and solid on there. My Panhard rod is sitting in here. This Panhard rod is really good because it's got this double threaded adjustable boss in it, so I can sort of wind it in and out the length with the opposing threads on one end. So what we've got now is we've got our bracket that we need to mount to the car. The thing is there is no way that if I just welded this to the sheet metal of the car up here, it would actually stay together. There are a lot of forces that are going to go through this bar. So basically, if you can imagine, if I am going to be doing a right-hand corner, all of the way to the shell is going to be trying to go over to the left. and the wheels will probably stay where they are. So you can imagine that this is going to be pushing, this whole axle is going to be trying to sort of come outside of the car, and all of that is going to be transferred through this mount here, this where this foot is mounted, because this is going to be the only central location of the car. Now, the original T-bar is actually bolted into the chassis rail, so it's nice and solid up here, but there isn't that brace up further. So that's where this comes in, and I've actually gone and got myself some 50mm angle iron that's 5mm thick, and I'm going to run that across the entire length, and then also put some panels on either side to brace it all in to the car and weld it all into place, so that we have a nice solid structure to be able to weld our mount to. So let's start trimming and see what we can do about getting this angle iron fitted up to the car. All right, well, I've got my bar I've just knocked it into place. As you can see up in here, I've actually had to cut and bend over the end of the frame rail there where it joins into the boot floor. I drilled the spot welds out. So before I go any further, I need to come in here and weld up these holes. This is where I drilled out the spot welds. And that's where I'm going to be using this little contraption, which is fantastic. Basically, it's got a magnet on it, and I can stick the magnet on from behind the hole and adjust the level of this pad, so I can put this copper pad in behind the holes and just weld it up. I'll put a link to this in the description if you guys are interested in something like this. Very handy bit of gear for welding. All right, so my bar is in here, and I just went through and jacked up and down the diff just to make sure there's clearance everywhere and I'm not interfering where I've put everything. So what I'm going to do now is I've got my mount that I need to put on, but if I put it square with this bar didn't go in completely square just because of the way it's all together. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just work out the angle. I've worked out that I can tilt this to vertical, or actually even slightly closer to the forward angle of the car to match in with what this, because this is actually on this side, it's actually leaning backwards slightly. It doesn't matter a great deal. There's not that much, there's not going to be much twist in all this, and there's adjustment in the bar anyway. But I'm going to just tilt the bar back slightly by trimming the top off, and then we can tack it on, and we'll be basically there. All right, so my lower mount is all welded in now, or at least mostly welded in. I'm going to finish it all off when I get this car out on the rotisserie. Same with stitching in this whole bar all the way around, and all of the reinforcing, etc., that's going to go into this car will get done mostly when I can pull it apart and get to things. But basically, this is all in now. I've just jacked it up. There's enough room to clear the Panhard rod with the handbrake adjusters as they are, although brakes are something I'll get into more later. So you can see here, this is the diff side mounted onto the actual axle itself, and I welded this sort of spike thing on, and when I was first putting this together, I couldn't work out what it's for, but what it is actually going to be used for, and what I need to do to finish this all up, is to add extra reinforcing into this corner, because as I said, this is going to have lots of force coming this way, so it's going to potentially bend this mount. So what we're going to do is we're going to do a reinforcing bar from this bottom corner here across to the diff face itself, so that it's nice and solid, and it's not going to go anywhere. So that's the next thing, is to work out exactly what I'm going to put in here and how I'm going to mount it and get that all into place. All right, so you can see here that I've welded on this support brace. I've actually butted it up against the end of the diff and welded it on, because this entire section is all one piece anyway. So when you disassemble the diff, this half all stays together. I've left enough clearance so that I can get the pins through for the handbrake boot and also get the bolts out. So it's sort of tight. I've capped the end. This is a big, heavy, it's about a 8mm piece of steel, maybe 10mm piece of bar that I've welded on the end. So this is all super reinforced. It's probably massive overkill, but this thing is going to do the job nicely. I'll finish welding it all up when I can get it off and clean up the diff ready for painting and stuff to get it back on the car. But for the time being, that is all in place. So the last thing to do is to reinforce the sides. Okay, so here's our Panhard rod mount that mounts onto the body of the car, and as you can see, I've welded it up here, but it's only welded onto this piece of angle iron, which is quite well reinforced. But what I want to do now is cap off this end and tie this whole end in and put a plate up on the side on both sides to sort of lock it all together and make it nice and super solid, super rigid, all part of the structure. Tie it up to this, which is the big heavy part that's tied into the end of the frame rail. So tie it all into the frame rails, a big plate over the whole thing to tie it all together and make it super solid. All right, so you can see there that that's got a nice piece that's tied in all into this plate, which is nice and thick. So it all ties this all in and just gives an extra reinforcing plate to spread the load of the bar below. And obviously it's tied in all the way along lengthways as well. So it's nice and solid in the car. I'm just going to go over and do the same thing on the other side. And we are done. We have a Panhard rod all mounted in the car, both sides, all the reinforcing in there on either end, so it's all sort of capped in and locked into the car. Obviously, as I said before, I'm going to go through and weld it all up and sort of stitch it into the body sort of more permanently later. I've done a lot of the welding, but not completely finished it up. So that will be done when I can get the car on the rotisserie. For now, we have a Panhard rod system. This T-bar or trunnion arm that's still in there at the moment, Lots of people were commenting that they didn't quite understand how I'm lowering the roll centre, because the roll centre is basically going to be the centre of the Panhard rod. I'm actually keeping this T-bar in here, but I've got a spherical bushing that's going to go in here, that's or a spherical bearing that can rotate, and also another bushing for there in the centre. It's an oiled bearing, so I'll be machining out this centre, getting the bearing inserted into this housing, and then running on a brass bushing, all internally greased. So this will be able to slide slightly backwards and forwards. So basically it makes this arm, it changes this arm around so that at the moment, factory, without the Panhard rod, what this bar does is it locks this diff from going backwards and forwards like this, but also from rocking backwards and forwards. By making it so it can slide side to side, it's no longer locking the diff sideways. That's the job of the Panhard rod. This will just make it so that the diff doesn't rock backwards and forwards, so it can sort of slide slightly. And with this arc, we're talking 4 or 5 mil is probably all this thing is going to slide sideways. It's not going to move very much at all. It's a very, very slight movement in there. I mean, at the moment, I managed to jack this up and down a few times. There's enough movement in the bushings that are in here at the moment as it is to keep the Panhard rod locking things into place, and this sort of had enough room because it's not tight. So we're all done. That's it for today. So I think that means it's time for Fun Facts with Mrs. Jeff.
Hey guys, the 1984 season saw the introduction of Alfa Romeo's 184T. The car ran the 890T engine, which was introduced in the previous season. It was a 1.5 litre V8 turbo producing 680 horsepower, but by this time it was underpowered compared to its rivals. The 1984 season also introduced new regulations which limited the cars to 220 litres of fuel per race. Now the 890Ts were notoriously hard on fuel, so this was another obstacle for them. This lack of power made the drivers Riccardo Patrese and Eddie Cheever push their cars even harder, which just resulted in more retirements due to the car's unreliability or simply running out of fuel. Between the two drivers, they only managed to finish 12 of the 32 races they entered that year, with Patrese getting a third as his best result. 1985 saw the new 185T being used. But this one proved to be even worse, and Alfa Romeo switched back to the 184T for the second half of the season. That was the death knell for Alfa Romeo, and they withdrew completely from Formula One until re-entering again, just re-entering, in 2019.
All right, well, we have a Panhard rod installed. We are really getting there. I am quite happy with the progress that we're doing in the Alfarrari, so I'm not even sure what I'm doing next week.
Uncharted territory. You too, you're like a blur. Total blur.
Yeah, as you can see, it blurred, and it's just happened in 2 years' work or so, whatever it's taken so far.
It's like the Porsche, it was only 5 years.
Yeah, only 5 years. It's so fast.
It's like a blink of an eye. Some people commented we looked a lot younger at the start of that.
Yeah. You know the deal. Like, subscribe.
And thank you to our Patreons. And if you'd like to become one, you'll get to see the videos a day early with no ads.
Yes, great bonus. So we'll see you next time. See you guys.
5 litre V8 turbo producing how much? Power made the drivers Eddie Patrese, 1919. Yeah, with Patrese getting his best result. You know, now's got a K, death now. It's a good thing I speak Jeff.